All right, good stuff. Before we move on from gold, as you might have noticed, the general equities market is starting to wobble a little bit. There's immense volatility in the major indices, whether it be the NASDAQ or S&P 500 or Dow Jones. With that happening and gold rallying seasonally again, does that change your own personal focus in terms of strategizing? Does that make you kind of lean more towards the gold side in the event that there's some kind of systemic risk, or are you kind of still proceeding kind of with your game plan, and you're still liking the base metals such as copper? Because I know there's also a lot of headlines that are coming out that's saying growth is slowing down in China, and we could be in a recession or economic slowdown, and in that type of environment, of course, base metals are more prone to get hit.
Yeah, that's a very pertinent question. I mean, it's struggling with that one as well. I would say, short answer is I'm more confident on the precious metals and probably gold even more than silver, because silver is a little bit of a hybrid. It hasn't really changed my thoughts strategically too much, but if we look at the base metal side, and we could even say battery metals are kind of tied into that, because I don't know if that many people consider lithium or cobalt to really be base metals, but I think they all fit in with whether China slows down or the demand is still there. They're all going to have those same correlations. The one thing, I'm not negative on especially more negative on other types of base metals or battery metals. But the one thing that keeps me coming back to copper, it's a combination of the supply side being, in my opinion, perhaps more of a sure thing to having scarcity over the next few years than other base metals. And without even talking about the battery metals, I've tried to look at nickel and with zinc. For me, they're a little harder to understand, and there's also less of a clarity on the supply side, really being an issue. So when we don't talk about demand, we can say on the supply side, there has to be new discoveries taking place to replenish the supply. And copper is the only one that I'm very, very confident on, whether it's projects for the mid-tiers or projects for the seniors, that really works. But I should also add that I wish I've done more all the time I wish I've done more homework on other base metals, but copper is the one I'm the most comfortable with because, for various reasons, over the last 2 years, I decided to do a lot more research on copper. So because I'm more comfortable on it, I spend more time with it the same way as copper and gold, and particularly on the exploration side, I follow copper just as much as those other those precious metals, and feel more confident on it from the exploration side. That might still change going into the next year, but that's an important aspect for why, whatever happens in the macro environment, I'm not going to stop researching or stop owning many of these high potential copper plays, because I know that if it's not in the next year, sometime by the early 2020s, I think there's a great certainty there's going to be a need, regardless of the demand situation, because of the supply situation.
So a few years ago, you actually gave me a tip on a company. At the time, it was more of an explorer. It's now kind of transitioned more to a developer. It was a copper play in Botswana called MOD Resources. The company actually experienced a really great run, I believe, in early 2017, and even at 2018, it was actually holding up really well. I did used to own shares of this company. I did sell out around this time last year, and although the company has progressed their copper project, it seems that because copper is kind of taking a hit, it's not in favor as much. It's kind of come down from I believe about $3.20 a pound to what is it now, like the $2.50, $2.60 range.
Sure.
As a consequence, a developer like MOD Resources has kind of gotten hit. Maybe the decline is more exaggerated, and a lot might have to do with the fact that it's transitioning from explorer to developer. With the recent events, I guess, in the last year, what's your current take on that position of MOD Resources? Would you classify it more as an explorer still, or do you peg it as more of a developer, and just what's kind of been going on with that story?
Well, first of all, Greg, congratulations on selling out at the right time, and I wish I had the foresight you did, but that's one of those good examples of, regardless of the quality of the company, selling a lot of things at the beginning of 2018 was a smart choice, and so that's one that fits that bill, and it wasn't a huge position for me at that time, but over the last few months, it's come back into one of my top 3 positions, and it's a great question about this. Is a company a developer, an explorer, and how does that affect the trading? I think that's a big part. That's a problem for MOD, but it's a problem for many other plays as well. Is that they get treated more as a quote unquote boring developer than quote unquote an exciting explorer. And we've seen it time and time again. Some of these explorers with nothing of value in the ground get hyped up, and all these people kind of pile into them. And this is whether it's an ASX or an AIM or a TSX play. Companies go over 100 million market cap with nothing in the ground, and because everyone knows it's an explorer and it's an exciting area. MOD is not that case at all. I think it's a very important part of the story is the development side, but I've tried to pound the table that this is perhaps the most exciting explorer in the copper space, let alone the base metal space in general. And I met the company at the London 1-to-1 in November. It was my best meeting, and we discussed this, and I remember even talking to the chairman, Mark Clements, and he was open to asking Nick, what do you think we should do? And I told him, drill. Like, you've got to show the market that this is tier 1 potential. Even if it's not tier 1, show the market there's so much more to come. And I think that's happening, but that's the exciting thing about this space, is not just seeing the results, but seeing the decisions that companies make. So I am hopeful, and as a side note, it's always dangerous to use the word hope, because usually when you hope something in this space, it doesn't work out. But I'm hopeful that within the next few weeks we get a very clear plan for 2019, where a lot of people know that this company, MOD Resources, is a developer that has a great project that's very likely to be funded, that's going to move forward, but that more and more people see it as an exciting explorer, and that aspect of the story comes back to the forefront. And we'll see if that happens. And as one final side note, MOD, MOD on the ASX, there's you can play this through Metal Tiger MTR on the AIM exchange in London, which has some different characteristics. So depending on where you are in the world, there's 2 different ways to play it. The final point on it, the fact that it's in Botswana, that is still really undervalued. When we talked about West Africa earlier, I'm just more and more positive on Botswana in Africa compared to those other jurisdictions in West Africa. Not to put down those jurisdictions in West Africa, but Botswana and Namibia next door, those are 2 examples of countries. It doesn't matter what continent they're on. I think those are really set up to be kind of breakout jurisdictions over the next few years. And so that's another part of my conviction for MOD. It's so we'll see if all those pieces come together, but there's still a lot to like, and hopefully what I just described kind of starts to come to the forefront in 2019.
It's pretty cool that you were able to meet up with the companies in person, and they're very open to feedback and trying to even approach you and ask you for your own ideas. Speaking of the 121 conference in London, I know we got a lot of friends on MBG Trends, so shout out to the folks on there. I did hear that you managed to assemble a small meetup group there. What was that all about, and how did that go?
Yeah, well, no, I'm glad we brought this up, because I should give a very specific shout out to Kevin S. From Ireland, because he's one of our mutual friends on CO.ca, and he's the only person I knew that had attended previous one-to-ones in London and said they were great, and so that kind of spurred it. And unfortunately, you couldn't make it, and Fabi, the Next Big Rush, couldn't make it. As two other examples. It would have been nice, the more the merrier. But there were a few besides Kevin. Fundamental Analysis, from the UK was there, and meeting those guys in person was fantastic. And I did some meetings with them. And then there were a few other people we know. Bull Market Move, who's also based out of London area. It was cool to meet up with him. And then there were a few people that were more lurkers on CEO.ca or didn't contribute so much in MBG Trends, but altogether I think there were 7 or 8 of us, and we spent a lot of time together, especially during the cocktail hours. And it's just really cool to finally meet someone in person that you've had good conversations with online, and that in itself is a highlight of these conferences. I to my knowledge, there hasn't been that many other European meetups of CEO.ca people. I know that the Metals Investors Forums, the MIFs, those have been great ways for people in Canada, whether it's Vancouver or Toronto, to meet up with each other. But this was kind of like the European edition of that. So I would just highly recommend that a lot of people who are active or following CEO.ca, if you have a chance, try to meet up, with some of these people at one of these conferences. It kind of eases yourself into it, because I've gotten great value out of these conferences without meeting online people, but it just adds a whole nother dimension, because you don't feel like you're kind of like a nobody, and because it can be intimidating to go to one of these conferences when all the big wigs, the professionals, know each other. But that was important for this one-to-one, because I think I would have felt more intimidated if I didn't meet up with all these people. And it was a lot of fun to share notes and to socialize a bit. And I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it back, or probably won't be able to make it back this year. But if anybody has a chance to try it at least once, I'd highly recommend it. And feel free to reach out to me on CO.ca if you need any help kind of getting your foot in the door to one of these conferences.
Yeah, sorry guys, I really wanted to make it out to London this past year. Unfortunately, due to stuff going on with my extracurricular activities with real estate, I was not able to attend. So next time around, I'm going to have to make sure to get out there, and I'm going to drag Hedgeless Horseman along with me.
Yes, Hedgeless Horseman, another one. Awesome. That's great to hear, yeah.
With that said, Nick, I know you attended a lot of mining conferences in 2018. What's your outlook and plan for 2019? Are there any conferences in particular that you're eyeing and most keen on participating in this year?
Yeah, so 2018 was really my first year of really going out there and trying out a bunch of conferences. Definitely could start to rank them in terms of, okay, this is something that was cool, but maybe not worth going to again, versus this is a must-do. And one that's a must-do, and probably the only one I will attend for the first half of 2019, is PDAC. I wouldn't say it's clearly my favorite, but I definitely think it's a must-try at least once for people that can attend, because I love the special regional focused sessions. And so I'll just quickly say that even though the networking is good at PDAC, I just love that you have this combination of companies and government officials. It's probably the only conference where there's a guarantee that you're gonna have like mining ministers and sometimes even higher level ministers from countries all over the world who end up showing up. And as examples, the Western Tethyan session was a highlight last year. This is looking at Eastern Europe, that I will definitely be going to that again. There's an African breakfast that I didn't attend last year, but I'm super excited about that, and I think there'll be people from all over Africa at that one. There'll be a Mongolia Day, and that's the only time when you'll get like a whole bunch of people from Mongolia showing up in Toronto or for any conference for that matter outside of Mongolia so yeah, anyway, that's the type of thing that I love at PDAC, but PDAC is just huge, and there's so many other things you can do there too. So that's what I'll do in the first half of the year, and then hopefully I'll make it to Beaver Creek again, because even though I love this, London 1-to-1, I would say that Beaver Creek, for the networking aspect combined with meeting companies and the venue being in a really nice resort in Colorado, that is kind of the cream of the crop of the smaller scale conferences. So those, if there were just two conferences that I would try to attend every year, those would be the two. But I will add that I do like those Metals Investors Forums, and while I missed it last year, there is one of the Metal Investors Forums, the MIFs, is in PDAC right before Toronto, and I'm 99% sure I'll be able to make that as well. So I'm looking forward to that one, and that's always a good one, especially if you want to meet CEO.ca people. I couldn't recommend anything higher than any of those Metals Investors Forums. You'll always meet a lot of the online people. So that kind of gives you a good idea of the type of stuff I'm looking for this year.
Our good friend Fabi is giving a talk the upcoming Metals Investor Forum. Is that right?
Oh, I believe she's actually giving the talk at VRIC, the Vancouver Resource, or the one run by Cambridge House. So I think she will be at the Metals Investors Forum, but I believe the talk is for the Cambridge House VRIC event, in case anyone is interested.
All right, going to be looking forward to that. Nick, before we wrap up, is there any conviction idea / new play that you're willing to share with the audience at this time?
Ooh, a new one. I'll think about it for a few seconds. There's nothing new that's super exciting, but I'm actually happy that not too many people have really kind of picked up on Osino Resources, which is OSI on the TSXV. There's, sometimes when you meet the management and you just start piecing things together, you don't expect a company to be an instant multi-bagger, but you just get this idea, it's one way or another, this company is going to be successful. And that's how I feel about Osino. A big part of it was meeting the CEO, Haya Down. And like I mentioned before, Namibia, I'm very excited about it. If you were going to play Namibia, this is absolutely the best pick, for a small-scale play. It doesn't matter what commodity, because Haya is a Namibian national, and he's got the history there. And then not only that, he brought on Ross Beatty as, the largest shareholder, and I know he's good. It's Ross is actively interested in this area. It's not just some investment where he doesn't talk to Haya. So when I just, mention these things, it kind of surprises me that not more people are whoa, Ross Beatty's involved, and it's a significant position for him. I'm interested. The fact that people haven't caught on to that yet is wow, this is cool. It's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet, but it's almost surely going to happen. And I think the other aspect there is it wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing more, mid-tiers or seniors interested in Namibia. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but that's one to absolutely keep on the radar. And I don't have a huge position, but I have a nice moderate position, and I think at some point I'm going to add to it. It's not the cheapest thing out there, but again, to have something that's small, that Ross Beatty's very involved with, and that still not very many people are talking about, that's hard to find. And I think that's one that people should start putting on their radars for 2019, and maybe it will take a few years to really work out, but hey, this is an industry where you shouldn't expect to have these winners, overnight. A winner in a year or two, that's still pretty darn good if it's a multi-bagger.
Absolutely. Any thoughts on Adriatic Metals? That one's kind of been ripping lately. It's been a huge success story for a lot of investors. Shout out to Photo J and Pawn of MEG Trends. I know those guys are following that one closely.
Yes, yeah, Adriatic, yeah, ADT on the ASX. That I would hope to find more Adriatics out there. It was the one post-discovery play that's really kind of worked out and just kind of continued to gain momentum. And I should give a quick shout out to Pamplona Trader because it's interesting that maybe I would have figured this one out over time, but this is an example of where someone like Pamplona Trader posted it on CEO.ca and a lot of due diligence, and I think a lot of people bought the stock or at least got interested in the stock because they saw that research. And then they could do their own research, but it didn't really spread to the professional level until later. Actually, you could still say it's underfollowed. And so that's the value. Like, you don't have to go to conferences. Even though I met Adriatic and had a great meeting with them at the one-to-one, that was not necessary to get into this one. And so I think there very well could be more examples of these post-discovery type plays that just look so good that even if they don't move up right away, they look like a very good risk reward, and they end up being a very good potential takeout play. And like Adriatic's very unlikely to be a tier 1 candidate, but it at the same time it could be one of the most sought after tier 2 type things. And but at the same time, I am a little bit cautious because I don't know what's going to happen with Bosnia, and even though I love Eastern Europe for its potential, that's always something to keep in mind with these jurisdictions. And things look good in Bosnia; they definitely need mining, but you just never know when things could kind of turn for the worse. So right now, everything looks good. It's Adriatic's another one of my top 3 plays, but just wanted to throw that out there. It's always good to keep on top of the jurisdictions.
For sure, and I think people need to kind of appreciate that point of view. Not everything is trying to be a buzzkill and a downer. So with that said, congrats to everybody like Pamplona Trader who got in early on the trade and made good amounts of money on this one. I know a lot of people are kind of clamoring for this to be Hot Madden 2.0 or what was it,
yeah.
Mariana Resources, and that was kind of...
There are a lot of parallels to kind of how it's moving forward. So yeah, and of course that was a success story.
Yeah, I forget when that one was taken over, but that was probably on the order of triple-digit returns, right? If you got in early enough. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, congrats again to everybody who's making good money. With that said, if you had to pick one metal for this year, Nick, that you think will outperform or do the best, is there one that stands out in your mind, or is it more a combination of different metals, or is the price movement kind of not even on your radar at all since you're more kind of focusing on the day-to-day exploration stuff?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you added that last tidbit. I think the price radar is much less, or price of the metals is much less something I follow now than a few years ago, because I tend to look more at exploration plays or high margin, trying to find these higher margin deposits. But if I had to pick, I would pick gold. And not because I necessarily think it's going to move up the most, but in a possible deflationary scenario, gold might not go up the most, but it might hold up better, particularly against a sister metal like silver, which has that industrial side. So I think that's still something to keep in mind. Now, silver very well could be the big winner if the precious metal space moves up together and it's inflationary and you see all the other base metals going down, or not necessarily going down, but silver, kind of is a big winner. But I would pick gold, the gold space, as kind of the safest space on the downside, but still with a lot of upside potential. But again, I'm not betting on optionality plays. I mean, I would love to see the gold price go up, even for the gold explorers that I own, but I don't have super high expectations for any of the metals right now.
All right, Nick, thank you so much for your time. You're most generous, and best wishes for investment and speculation success in 2019.
Thanks so much for having me, Jay, and yeah, best wishes to you as well, and yeah, hopefully all the listeners and us make a lot of money for 2019. Thanks.